Hi, I'm Kat, and today I have for you a word in Romanian, a true crime case, and also today I'm doing my makeup. So the word in Romanian for today is ce faci. Ce faci. Ce faci. Well done, guys. You just said, how are you? And oh my god, you guys, today's case is going to be just horrible, seriously. Like, when I first heard of this case, I didn't really research it into much depth until now when I did my research for this video, and I had no idea of all the horrific details of this case. And if I'm honest with you, I was really struggling to finish the research for this. So, apart from my usual disclaimer, which is that I don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in today's video, and also all the information I'm giving you is already found in the public domain, and I'll also be sharing my own views and opinions, I need to give a warning that this case is very hard to listen to. And I will also be playing some audio clips and CCTV footage, and a bit of CCTV footage, so that will really get to you, because that's what got to me, if I'm honest with you. So I'm sure that you've heard of this case before. It's quite high profile, and it recently resurfaced in the news because of the appeals the killers made to have their sentences reduced. But if you haven't, today we are talking about Arthur Labinjo-Hughes. I very briefly did a few short videos on Arthur's case when it first unfolded, but like I mentioned to you already, I'll be honest with you, I never got so deep into the details, and I have to say that I was honestly shocked when I read everything and when I saw the CCTV footage and heard audio recordings of Arthur. It's just truly horrific, and quite frankly, I can't get it out of my head. This one, I have to say, really stayed with me. And I want to start with a quote from Arthur's mom. Arthur was the light of my life. He wasn't just my only child, he was my best friend. Never did I imagine he would be taken from this world so early in his life. If Arthur could ask for one last thing, it would be that he was remembered for his superpower. Arthur was just 6 years old when he died after suffering horrific abuse at the hands of his father and his father's partner. He sustained an unsurvivable brain injury on June 16, 2020, while he was with his dad's partner Emma in her home in Cranmore Road, Solihull, West Midlands. The horrific case of Arthur Labinjo-Hughes is raising serious questions about how his went undetected for so long. Did authorities fail in their duty to protect him, or did lockdown prevent them from saving him? In the space of just 18 months, Arthur went from a bright and bubbly boy to a weak and emaciated one, petrified for his life. So let's just get into all of the details. Arthur Labinjo-Hughes was born on 4th of January 2014 to his mom Olivia Labinjo-Hughes and his dad Thomas Hughes. His parents separated shortly before his second birthday when he was 19 months old. Both parents shared custody of him whilst he lived with his mother. Arthur was described by those who loved him as a lovely child. He was very gentle, very intelligent, he enjoyed school, and he was very easy to please. He loved reading and learning new things. One of his favorites was Julia Donaldson books. He loved his mom, his grandma, and his uncle dearly. Arthur really liked his food, he enjoyed school, he loved playing cricket, and he was an avid Birmingham City fan. He loved playing football, playing outside, and adored spending his time with his extended family. He had a very keen interest in DC and Marvel superheroes. He was a healthy and happy young boy. In June 2018 was the first time that social services became involved in Arthur's life. A domestic abuse incident between Arthur's mother and her new partner Gary Cunningham prompted a children in need assessment by Birmingham Children's Trust that concluded with no further action. At the time of the incident, Arthur was not present. In February 2019, 29-year-old Olivia stabbed her new partner Gary to death after a period of mutual domestic. It seems it was during a drugs argument, however I am not quite sure. She was arrested and later convicted of manslaughter, being sentenced to 11 years in prison. A further children in need assessment by Birmingham Children's Trust concluded with no further action. Olivia's arrest led to Thomas Hughes becoming Arthur's sole carer. Arthur then changed schools to Dickens Heath Community Primary School and moved into an annex behind his paternal grandparents' home with his father. According to his grandmother, Arthur was at first quite nervous, but he quickly became a happy, well-rounded child. Arthur's father was assessed to be a protective factor for him. According to Andrew, Thomas's brother, Olivia's conviction only strengthened the relationship between Arthur and his dad. It was like them two against the world. In August 2019, 29-year-old Thomas, Arthur's father, meets 32-year-old Emma Tustin online on the dating website Plenty of Fish. In early autumn 2019, they were already in a relationship. Thomas introduced his son to Emma very early on in the relationship, and she later stated that she and Arthur were friends straight away. And this is where things start unfolding. I don't know how many times I'll have to highlight this, but please don't introduce your children to your new partner early on. It's never a good idea. First of all, that relationship might not last and your child will only get affected by someone leaving them yet again. Secondly, you have no idea what that person is like after only knowing them for a couple of months. So why would you risk exposing your child to something that you have no idea about? As Arthur returned to school after the summer holidays, a teaching assistant stated that she had no concerns about his well-being. However, the child's uncle noted that Thomas seemed to be becoming stricter with the boy, and Arthur appeared of being more fearful of getting into trouble. An official at Arthur's school noted that the child became less happy as autumn progressed. There was also an incident during a school nativity play where Arthur became upset when a baby doll was removed from its crib. By October 2019, Arthur had no contact with his maternal family. Arthur's father stopped the contact between Arthur and his mother, his maternal grandmother, and the maternal extended family. In November 2019, Thomas and his mother Joanne met staff at Arthur's school to talk about their growing concerns about his behavior. Teachers reported that Arthur was becoming quite obsessed and fixated with his dad disappearing from his life or killing him, and he also became obsessed with death, murder and guns. Now you can imagine that, at this point Arthur, he was already separated from his mother, so I think that it's safe to assume this is where his fear of his father disappearing from his life stems from. We also don't know how much Arthur knew or witnessed of what his biological mother did. I mean, when, she killed her then partner, we don't know what Arthur was told about what happened. And also, as you will see later on, Arthur had a well-founded concern about his father killing him. And he said it. Arthur said it from the beginning. A child his age wouldn't normally know these things unless, of course, an adult would tell him something about that, right? In December 2019, Arthur's mom, biological mom, Olivia, tried to reconnect with her son after she initiated the process for contact arrangements through a child arrangement order. As part of this process, Children and Family Court Advisory and Support Service, also known as CAFCAS for short, became involved with Arthur. In January 2020, Arthur was referred to mental health services because of escalating concerns about his behavior and also about his emotional well-being. These changes started to be noticed in the autumn of 2019 by staff in school and by his father at home. A referral was then made to Solihull Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service by Arthur's GP. In March 2020, Thomas took Arthur to children and adolescent mental health services practitioner Carrie Forsyth Benson, who reported Arthur telling her that he was worried about his dad not returning. She said his physical appearance seemed fine, and as his aggression and anxiety reduced, she concluded there was no mental health issue. Thomas believed that Arthur had behavioral issues because of his separation from his mother. And I would also add on here that yes, Arthur did have trauma from his separation from his mother, but he also must have had anxiety from all the threats that Thomas made against his own son, as we will find out later. When the COVID lockdown was announced in March 2020, Thomas and Arthur moved from the grandparents' home into Emma's home in Solihull, which was a horrendous mistake. Within 3 months, Thomas's relationship with his parents became strained because they believed that Arthur was not being properly treated by Emma. That included inappropriate discipline. Now, before we move any further, I just want to give you a fun fact about Solihull. Solihull is home to the National Motorcycle Museum, which houses the largest collection of British motorcycles in the world, with over 1,000 machines from 171 different manufacturers. In April 2020, which was just about 1 month after moving in with Emma, Thomas and Arthur, they returned back to his parents' house for a few days due to a disagreement with Emma. Whilst he was at his grandparents' house, Arthur said that he had been pinned against the wall by Emma, called a horrible, ugly brat, and his grandmother found several bruises on his back. This would have been the exact right moment for Thomas to actually rethink his relationship with Emma and to protect Arthur by not going back to her. But Thomas soon returned to Emma's house and refused the grandmother's request to leave Arthur at her house for longer, prompting her to report Thomas to social services. More than one witness actually reported that Thomas's move into Emma's house was just a side effect of the pandemic. He and Arthur were at Emma's house on the day that the Prime Minister announced the lockdown, and so they remained there. When she was 15-year-old, Emma Tustin was convicted for battery, and when she was 16 she had a conviction for shoplifting. She had a difficult and troubled upbringing. She suffered from a combination of mental illnesses with a history of failing to take medication. She previously attempted to kill herself by jumping from the 6th floor of a car park. She suffered very serious injuries and she was actually in a hospital for about 6 months. She also suffered domestic abuse at the hands of Thomas and earlier partners. Emma had 2 children of her own and she was already known to social services. Signs of abuse became apparent in April 2020 when Arthur visited his grandparents. He told them that Emma grabbed his face and called him an ugly, horrible brat. So on 16th of April 2020, Joanne Hughes, Arthur's grandmother, reported Arthur to social services after taking photos of bruises on his back, which she discovered when Thomas and Arthur visited her. She even tried to convince Thomas to leave Arthur with her, but like we already know, he refused. The paternal grandparents voiced growing concerns about bruising with Solihull emergency duty team. The emergency team called the police that evening, informing them of the concerns raised and asking for a safe and well check. However, police denied the request for the safe and well visit because they have already seen Arthur the previous day. This safe and well check is really the welfare check, because you know the police wouldn't want to waste their time after seeing, you know, Arthur the previous day. Because what can possibly happen in 24 hours, right? I mean, it's not like anything is gonna happen. Social services and the police visited Emma's home on 17th and 18th of April 2020 and they saw Arthur. Social worker Jane Kavanagh was told by Emma that her son and Arthur had been play fighting with boxing gloves, resulting in the bruises, and said she could see a single faint bruise in the middle of Arthur's back. Now, I don't know if it really is plausible. I mean, when you have fighting gloves on, do you really get bruised? Isn't that the purpose of the boxing gloves on, so you don't get injured? I would assume. I don't know. When asked how happy and safe the children felt on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being represented by the floor and the ceiling being the opposite, both boys very confidently jumped up and pointed at the ceiling, saying they felt very safe and very happy. Now, my question is, were the boys asked this in front of the adults? Specifically Emma, because if so, how could a child say something negative about their attacker in front of them? Also, was Arthur as well confirming that he was safe and happy, or was Emma's son doing it and of course the social worker just assumed it was both boys? Because Emma's children never suffered any violence, however Arthur did. So, go figure, the social worker concluded there were no safeguarding concerns and no need to refer the case for a full child service assessment. This would have been when Arthur was 6 years old. No action was taken. But following this, Thomas cut off contact with his family, who didn't see Arthur again before his death, which is a red flag. I'm going to say this. No matter how many reports a relative would make to police or social services, when you know that you are not doing anything wrong whatsoever, there is no reason to cut contact with them, right? In my opinion, yes, I know that you do get the odd reports made out of spite or, whatever else, but in most cases, when reports are made, there is a reason why the reports are being made, because the child is not safe. And in most cases, a caregiver cuts contact with family if the caregiver has a reason to hide something. In my opinion, again, Thomas was also offered an early help program to assist Arthur in dealing with his traumatic past, also known as life story offer. As it turns out, according to Thomas, Emma actually coached the boys to lie to social services about their fight with boxing gloves, and she even warned Thomas that they would have their children taken from them if he didn't go along with it as well. On 18th of April 2020, Arthur's uncle Daniel Hughes spoke to West Midlands police about the bruises on Arthur's back. He sent the photos to an officer, but he never heard back from this officer. Police later closed the log, of course they did, believing it required no further role for force response, as social services were involved. Even with the photos, there were issues from the beginning. The photos were initially sent to police on April 18 by Arthur's grandmother or uncle, is not exactly clear. They do receive the photos, so the police receives the photos, which were then supposed to be sent to MESH, the multi-agency safeguarding hub, but the photos were never sent. On 20th of April 2020, Joanne Hughes told Arthur's school about the referral to social services. Michelle Hall, safeguarding lead at Dickens Heath Community Primary School, contacted social services, but she was told by them that they had no concerns. Does this story sound familiar to you? I mean, how many times have we heard this before? How many times has this been a broken record? No concerns, no concerns, no concerns, and then you have a child who is dead, yet no concerns, right? It was only on 24th of April that the safeguarding hub received the photos with the bruises. Family members at this point, they continue to express their concerns to children's social care, the police, and even Arthur's school. By the end of April, it was decided that no further investigation was needed in relation to the family's concerns about bruising. It was hoped that the family would consent to an offer of life story work with Arthur, which would be an opportunity to monitor and escalate any safeguarding concerns. But at the end of April, Arthur's father, Thomas, declined the offer of life story work. It was hoped, but it was not enforced or monitored or whatever else. I mean, I have a question. When people do report, right? The family reports, the school reports, they take all the steps necessary. What the heck is the police and social services doing? If the family would go and take Arthur away from the situation to protect him and keep him safe, the police would accuse them of kidnapping, even though they know fully well that Arthur is being. It does not make any sense. What the heck is going on? I feel like these authorities are not bloody using their bloody common sense. It infuriates me, honestly. In May 2020, Arthur was made to stand in the hallway for long periods of time as punishment for his alleged misbehavior. Yep, this is another common story, isn't it? We keep hearing these stories over and over again. It's never ending. Emma reported these incidents to Thomas through text messages and audio clips of Arthur crying. In these clips, Arthur could be heard crying for his grandmother and for his uncle, and at one point, Arthur said, "Nobody loves me." This just honestly, guys, completely broke my heart, and this will stay with me. Arthur was clearly in pain. He was heartbroken. He was defenseless, and he was alone. Emma and Thomas used insults such as Satan, Hitler, Devil Child, Weasel, and various swear words to refer to Arthur. Thomas would frequently threaten violence against his son. Emma said at one point to Thomas, "I want you, but I don't want him." By the end of the month, Arthur was moved out of Emma's son and daughter's bedroom, and he was made to sleep on the living room floor. In the same month, Emma's stepfather, John Dutton, made an anonymous referral to social services because he felt Arthur was in danger. This was Emma's stepfather. On 8th of June 2020, Arthur's school reopened. But Thomas didn't send Arthur back to school. Thomas was contacted by the school about Arthur's absence, but he gave various excuses for his absence. At first, he claimed Arthur didn't sleep well and would return the next day. Over the following days, Thomas reported to school that Arthur was losing weight, he wasn't eating, and he might faint. He never went back to school before his death. So now we have Thomas's own family reporting serious concerns, the school reporting serious concerns, and even Emma's own family reporting serious concerns. Can it be any more obvious than this? You tell me, can it be any more obvious than this? Everyone around Arthur are genuinely worried about Arthur's safety. What's the police and social services excuse here? What is the excuse? Perhaps that the family just don't like Emma or their relationship? I don't know. It's just infuriating. Emma and Thomas, they installed a camera at home to, of course, monitor Arthur during his isolation. Arthur spent 35 hours of the 3-day period between 12th and 14th of June in the hallway, having been forced to go there by his father and stepmother. So 35 hours. You have 72 hours in 3 days. Out of 72 hours, Arthur spent 35 hours in the hallway. 35 hours out of 72 hours. Let that sink in. He was 6 years old. If he would enter the living room, he would be slapped by Emma. The camera also recorded Thomas, Emma, and her children enjoying food and leisure activities, but Arthur was not allowed to eat or to participate in these activities. On 15th of June, Emma took Arthur with her to an appointment with her hairdresser, Catherine Milhenge. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the name right. who said that Arthur was told to face the door and not move during the 6-hour session. She described his appearance as skeletal, and his legs were shaking like he couldn't hold himself up. He collapsed to the floor as they left the hairdressers, but he wasn't helped by either Emma or Thomas when he arrived. Later that evening, Thomas belted Arthur's leg and later told Emma to just end him. This is coming from Arthur's own father, to just end him. On 16th of June 2020, CCTV footage from the camera in the living room where Arthur slept on the floor showed him appearing weak as he woke up and struggled to carry his duvet out of the room. He was in visible pain. The family returned to Catherine's house to finish the hair appointment. Of course, that hair appointment is extremely important, especially when, you have a 6-year-old who is clearly in pain. Yep. During this time, both Emma and Thomas took turns at shouting at Arthur as if it was a game of tennis. Catherine's partner, Tobias Jarman, gave Arthur a glass of water without Emma and Thomas knowing, and Arthur just looked petrified. He later described Arthur as gaunt, malnourished, and a poor little kid who was broken. Thomas shouted at him, "Shut up, you little cunt." Emma was heard saying to Thomas, "Look what he's doing, tell him to stand up." Thomas then shouted at Arthur, "Stand up effing straight. You wait till we get home. I'll put you 6 feet under." Let me highlight that this is Thomas's biological father telling him that he will put him 6 feet under. Thomas also threatened Arthur that he would rip his head off and use it as a football. Wonderful. The hairdresser heard Arthur scream. Emma told her that Thomas was pressure pointing him because he hurts. So now I think you can understand where Arthur's fear expressed at school came from when he said that his dad is going to kill him. From all of these things that Thomas would tell Arthur, he was only trying to speak and to make his views heard. But with all the people who knew something was not right, social services and the police decided that they don't want to hear Arthur's. Thomas, Emma, and the children returned home around 1 p.m. from the hairdresser appointment. At 1:11 p.m., Thomas left the house with Emma's children to go to the supermarket. During their absence, Arthur was fatally assaulted, but messages were exchanged between Thomas and Emma. She stated that Arthur was still screaming. She took a photograph of Arthur's reddened and bruised face at 1:55 p.m., which was sent to Thomas. Arthur's right eye was closed. He was clearly in pain. That as well was sent to Thomas. At around 2 p.m., Emma went upstairs to use cosmetics. Yes. It's believed that she then gave Arthur an overdose of salt in the bathroom at around this time, although Emma denied this. At 14:09, Emma sent a message to Thomas saying he ain't bruised his face, the marks gone lighter, ending, "Won't face the door, you ain't telling him no more." The couple then spoke on the phone for nearly 6 minutes. She then photographed Arthur in the hallway at 2:15 p.m. CCTV routinely recorded inside the house showed Arthur crying at 2:15 and being marched by Emma into the hallway by the scruff of his neck. Arthur's crying was also recorded on her mobile phone. After 2:30 p.m., Emma sent a message to Thomas to, of course, tell him that Arthur threw himself against a wall before thunking himself against the master bedroom door. She also wrote he wouldn't get up off the floor and claimed that he knocked himself out by hitting his head on the floor. I have to say that I think Emma was thinking of herself as, some kind of an influencer, like when those influencers, they take photos just about everything to post on social media, right? It seems that Emma, she really loved taking photos of Arthur's obvious suffering. It's kind of like, you know, I'm so proud of myself for what I accomplished, let me just brag about it. And then Thomas was so proud of his partner for doing all of this to Arthur, like giving her a pat on the back and encouraging even more violence against his own son. Let's not forget here that Arthur is Thomas's own son, which is just completely disgusting. CCTV then showed Emma in a state of agitation entering the hallway at 2:29 p.m. That's when and where the fatal assault took place. She went into the hallway where Arthur was located. She shook him and hit his head against a hard surface multiple times. The assault is believed to have lasted 1 minute. She then returned to the living room and of course took her phone before going back into the hallway and then into the kitchen. She then went back to the hallway holding her phone, of course, as if about to use it. At 2:33 p.m. she took a photo of Arthur in a state of collapse. Moments before the photo was taken, she sent a message to Thomas saying, "Just copped me in the stomach. He has threw himself all over the floor, won't get up for I've shut the door on him." CCTV showed Emma carrying Arthur between the hallway, the living room and the kitchen, attempting to sit him up, although he was clearly by this point unconscious. His body slumping to the floor before finally placing him on the sofa. No attempt was made to resuscitate Arthur. At 2:36 p.m. Emma decides to call Thomas. He returned home at 2:37 p.m. with Emma's children. He walked past his son and returned with a can of drink for Arthur, who was still unconscious. As if a can of drink is really going to help Arthur at this point. He was unconscious and Thomas decided that the best way to help Arthur would be not to attempt CPR, but to instead get a drink for an unconscious boy. I mean, in which universe does it make sense? Emma tried to give Arthur Calpol, like that's going to make it so much better, right? 12 minutes after Thomas returned from the shops, she called 999 at 2:42 p.m. and told medics that Arthur fell and banged his head, and while he was on the floor, he banged his head another 5 times.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
Barely.
Okay, is he breathing right now though, even if he's...
Is he breathing, Tom? He keeps taking big dark breaths. Basically, my 6-year-old stepson is fallen, he's banged his head.
Okay.
And while he was on the floor, he's banged his head another 5 times.
Okay.
He's lost colour, he's got a big lump on his head.
Is he awake?
So what, sorry?
Is he awake?
He's half in and out, but he's banged his head quite hard.
Is his breathing noisy or abnormal?
Is it noisy or abnormal? It's barely there, he's barely breathing, he's in and out, he's taking it hard. He's basically been treating us all like himself on the floor, he's headbutting the floor. I'm trying to pick him up in the process, he's headbutting me in the process.
Okay.
I've got him up, he was breathing like a little bit better at first.
Yeah.
Washed him down, put some water down him, tried to obviously get him like, a bit more colour in him, but then obviously I've seen the lump on his head that he's done to himself.
Right. Help's been arranged for him. Okay.
Yeah.
Try and keep calm for me. Can you get him lay out flat on his back?
Flat on his back.
How old is he?
He's 6, nearly 7.
6 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, there is me.
He's losing colour. He's very pale, but obviously it's a big bang. He's knocked himself out by the look of him.
And he's barely breathing now.
He's breathing. He's barely breathing. He's lost just at the minute.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you how to give basic life support. Okay, so you can just keep going. He's still not responding.
No.
Okay, just keep going for me.
He's
Don't
got
stop.
2 big lumps on his head where he's banged himself.
Okay. Just keep going. Don't stop. Just keep going that way. Push, 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 push.
Paramedics from West Midlands Ambulance Service and officers from West Midlands Police arrived on scene shortly after the emergency call was made. Paramedics arrived 8 minutes later. This story that Emma gave is just not credible at all. Not credible. Body cam footage from emergency services show poor Emma crying. Yes, Emma was shown crying as she claimed that Arthur repeatedly headbutted the floor, and when she tried to get him off the floor, he headbutted her, hit her and kicked her. I will play you the clip, but please also pay attention to Thomas's demeanor as well.
Briefly, what happened?
Yes. Basically, he'd gone out to get me a birthday cake and stuff for the kids. Arthur was told to sit on the thinking step. Arthur's put himself all over the floor. He's banged himself off the radiator. He's hit me. He's kicked me in the process of me trying to get him back on the thinking step. He's then gone on all fours on the floor, and I've told him to get up. And I shut the door over, and all I heard was a crack off the floor. He was headbutting the floor on all fours. Headbutted the floor once, said, "Arthur, get up, you're going to hurt yourself. I've phoned your dad." He went, "I don't care." At that point, he was fine. And then he dropped his head again as I've tried to bear hug him and pick him up, and he headbutted the floor 3 times.
Here on this carpet?
Round about, the door was shut, so if you go in, I'll show you. Because it's probably about here his head was, but it's concrete, there's no underlay under that. He'd knocked himself unconscious. I picked him up, put him on the sofa, poured water in his mouth.
So you've come in, he's banged his head 3 or 4 times
I was
here.
in the kitchen, then I'd sat down in the living room, and that's when he threw himself on the floor.
And you heard him banging his head?
Him bang his head.
So what did you do?
I came out to him and told him to get up. He told me no. So I tried to bear hug him and put my arms underneath him and pick him up. And he dropped, and he banged his head another 3 times off the floor. And as I picked him up, he hit me and he kicked me as I was trying to get him up. Like I say, he's like the last 6 months, he's battered both my kids. He's smashed this house to pieces. He's battered his dad. He's hit me. When I tried to get him off the floor from headbutting the floor, he headbutted me and he kicked me and he's hit me. Yesterday we went to my friend's house and he pushed me down 5 stairs. "You're not my real mum, I hate ya. I'm gonna get my mum to kill you," he said. And even so, I've done my best for that kid.
Have you noticed his demeanor in the clip? He seemed really agitated, like very nervous. He just couldn't stand still. I think, well, to me at least, it's a clear sign of guilt or of knowing that the story Emma gave was not true. I think that at this point Thomas knew that they were in trouble. I'm not sure if Thomas himself really believed Emma's story of what happened, or he was just trying to make himself believe it because he knew that they were Arthur and he had no choice now but to go along with it. Or maybe just like the visit from social services when Emma coached the children to lie and told Thomas they would be taken away, maybe she told Thomas the same thing now about how her children will be taken away because Arthur died in their care. Arthur was taken to the Birmingham Children's Hospital, and later that evening Emma and Thomas were both arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. Once admitted to hospital following a surgery to relieve pressure on the brain, it became clear that the prognosis was fatal and that all treatment would be in vain. On 17th of June 2020, doctors concluded nothing could be done to save Arthur and his life support machine was switched off at 1 a.m. Arthur died on 17th of June 2020 of catastrophic brain injury inflicted the day before by violent shaking and his head hitting a solid surface on multiple occasions with a force equivalent to a high-speed traffic incident. He suffered multiple cardiac arrest and irreparable brain damage. From the violent shaking, Arthur's head was hyperextended and flexed on the neck. At the same time, his head was hit against a wall or floor several times. He just couldn't be saved. Hospital tests revealed that Arthur had abnormally high salt levels and he was seen to have bruising in many areas uncommon for accidental bruising in a child. A post-mortem later revealed that Arthur had 130 marks and bruises on his head, body and limbs, including bruising of different ages. A number of medical professionals said that they didn't believe the injuries Arthur had could have been self-inflicted. A 6-year-old child simply could not have generated enough force to have caused the fatal injury to his own head. A specialist kidney consultant said that for Arthur to have had such high salt levels in his system, he had either ingested at least 6.5 tablespoons of salt on the day that he was fatally injured, which the expert couldn't see how a child would have done this, other than if he was deliberately force-fed a mix of salt and water by an adult, or that Arthur had repeatedly been poisoned with heavily contaminated food and or water over a longer period of time. Arthur's left kidney had shrunk, and so had his thymus gland, a small organ in the chest that forms part of the immune system. Dr. Roger Malcolmson, a consultant pathologist, said this shrinkage was likely caused by severe and or prolonged physical stress, the effect of repeated and sustained abuse. Arthur's body was a patchwork of bruises. He was dehydrated, his ribs were protruding, and his eyes were sunken. There was bleeding on his brain, and his retinas were detached. Yes, you heard that right, his retinas were detached. Arthur was subjected to prolonged periods of forced standing, was isolated from his family and friends, and intimidated both physically and verbally. There were multiple assaults of Arthur during the 3 months period between 23rd of March 2020, when the lockdown happened, and he moved into Emma's house, and his death on 17th of June. The full extent of the assault suffered by Arthur only became apparent after his death. Much of the abuse was recorded by Emma and Thomas on CCTV or even audio. Arthur was not allowed any friendly interaction or play and was isolated from his extended family. He was made to sleep on the hard floor in the living room. Emma's children, aged 5 and 6, they lived a normal life. They lived a normal and happy life within the home, whilst the abuse on Arthur took place. He spent many hours of each day standing in isolation. CCTV recovered from inside the home showed Arthur, in the days leading up to his death, standing in the hallway for periods between 6 and 14 hours a day. On a hot day, he was made to stand in a fluffy, thick onesie. Emma even posted photos on Instagram of her and Thomas enjoying the weather in a hot tub in their garden, whilst Arthur stood in the hallway in a onesie. The CCTV shows Thomas walking past him to go out for ice creams for everyone in the home, but not for Arthur. Arthur would be punished for unauthorized movements, such as attempts to sit down to relieve his discomfort. He was repeatedly shouted at, sworn at, and insulted in the most derogatory and foul-mouthed way. He was also repeatedly directly threatened with violence by Thomas and Emma. Text messages revealed Thomas making a series of graphic and chilling threats of shocking violence in terms that must have been terrifying for Arthur. On 15th of June 2020, the night before the assault that killed Arthur, Thomas actually sent a message to Emma saying that he should just end him. CCTV footage showed his father and stepmother slapping, smacking, and grabbing him. Thomas used pressure pointing as a method to cause pain with minimal visible injury. Extensive injuries and 130 bruises were found at the post-mortem examination. Arthur's access to food and drink were controlled and restricted. Audio recordings captured Arthur's distress and request for food and drink. In one, Arthur said, "I want my Uncle Blake. Please help me, Uncle Blake. They are not feeding me. I need some food and a drink." There was evidence of Arthur repeatedly calling for water and rejecting food despite his obvious hunger, as well as of significant salt ingestion half an hour before the fatal attack. Emma and Thomas knew exactly what they were doing to Arthur, and they persisted in it. This was not just cruelty, but sadistic cruelty motivated by hatred for Arthur. They both knew the extent of his suffering at the time, and they were cruel and indifferent to it. Emma Tustin was responsible for the long-term salt poisoning and a large dose of salt given not long before the attack, which killed Arthur. When Emma launched the attack, she intended to kill Arthur. It was obvious from the amount of force used, and because she no longer wanted Arthur in her home. She wanted Thomas to provide for her and her children without Arthur being in the picture. She didn't get any help for Arthur immediately after the attack, when it was obvious that Arthur needed immediate medical attention. Thomas, his father, encouraged violence, knowing that this will result in injury. It's clear from messages and conversations, even threats, that Thomas made to Arthur. And he not only allowed Emma to assault Arthur, but he also took part in it. Thomas knew there is a risk of Arthur being killed, and he did nothing. He encouraged Emma to use violence on Arthur. His words and his actions were designed to encourage her to violence. He was supposed to protect Arthur. He was responsible for his care. He even lied to Arthur's school to keep him at home to protect himself and Emma. Emma's two children witnessed a lot of the cruelty over the 3 months, and they saw Arthur after the attack, which later proved fatal. They even made audio recordings and they took photos. They had CCTV. Due to the nature of Arthur's injuries and the account given by Emma and Thomas, they were both arrested on the evening of 16th of June 2020, initially on suspicion of assault and then murder. Police officers examined hundreds of videos, audio files and photos found on Emma's and Thomas's mobile phones, and analyzed thousands of messages they sent each other. They uncovered significant evidence of abuse inflicted on Arthur by both of them. Emma Tustin was convicted of murdering Arthur Labinjo-Hughes at Coventry Crown Court in December 2021, and she was given a life sentence with a minimum of 29 years. She is being held at HMP Peterborough. Jurors also convicted Emma of 2 counts of child cruelty, including salt poisoning and also withholding food and drink from Arthur. She had already admitted 2 other cruelty counts: willfully assaulting Arthur on 3 occasions and isolating him, including by forcing him to stand in the hallway for up to 14 hours a day as part of a draconian punishment regime. Thomas Hughes was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 21 years. He is being held at HMP Wakefield. Thomas had denied any wrongdoing, but he was also convicted of the child cruelty offences which Emma admitted. However, he was cleared of withholding food and drink or of poisoning his son with salt. The jurors took 6 hours and 15 minutes to deliver the verdict, and afterwards held a minute's silence in Arthur's memory.
This is Arthur Labinjo-Hughes on the last morning of his life. Weak, emaciated and struggling to stand after weeks of being threatened, beaten, starved and poisoned with salt, which prosecutors described as child torture. Later, this once happy little boy suffered a fatal brain injury at the hands of his father's girlfriend, the violence encouraged by his dad.
To see a child that ill and what they were doing to him, tormenting him, abusing him, they are cold, calculating, systematic torturers of a defenceless little boy. They're wicked, evil.
Arthur's killer was Emma Tustin.
He was headbutting the floor on all fours. Headbutted the floor once, said, "Oh, forget it, you're going to hurt yourself, I've phoned your dad."
On the day she murdered him, she claimed to police that his injuries were self-inflicted.
And he headbutted the floor 3 times.
Here on this
Yeah.
cop.
But she and his father, Thomas Hughes, had been abusing Arthur for months, Ever since they'd moved in to her house in Solihull in March last year. In clips that are difficult to listen to, she even made recordings of Arthur in distress. In another recording, he's crying out for food. As a punishment, Arthur was made to stand in the hallway for up to 14 hours a day. His cries for help went largely unheard because this all happened during the first lockdown last year. But both the police and social services did visit him 2 months before he died. They were called by his paternal grandmother after she noticed bruises on his back, but neither social workers nor the police found cause for concern. Did the police miss an opportunity to save him?
The no further action by the police was in relation to criminal offences, but it was very much that it was over to social services, and it was that joint investigation. The IOPC is conducting an investigation into the actions of the police response on that day.
Tustin and Hughes were manipulative.
He's smashed this house to pieces. He's battered his dad. He's hit me.
Moments after inflicting horrific injuries on him, she sought to blame her 6-year-old victim. Convicted of murder and he of manslaughter, they'll be sentenced tomorrow. Arthur's mother is also in prison for an unrelated offence, but she paid tribute through his maternal grandmother.
If Arthur could ask for one final thing, it would be that he was remembered for his superpowers. That was what I will always remember for, his superpower. And Arthur's superpower was his smile.
The boy who died thinking he wasn't loved was. There was just no one to protect him.
During the trial, Dr. Sarah Dixon, a consultant pediatrician who wrote a report about Arthur's lived experience, was asked how great a force would be needed to cause the head injuries that Arthur sustained. She said, quote, "It would be akin to the kind of force generated with high-speed road traffic collisions or a fall from height from a first or second floor window onto an unyielding surface, something like concrete," end of quote. As the prosecutor told the murder trial, Arthur was cherished by all. But in March 2020 came the lockdown and Arthur's life went downhill fast. Jonas Hank in Queen's Counsel told the jury that he became a target for derision, abuse and systematic cruelty. The killers have each tried to blame the other for what happened over Arthur's last 3 months. Emma portrayed Thomas as a violent bully with a short temper whose disciplinary regime spiraled out of control. Thomas portrayed Emma as a manipulative femme fatale who led him astray. She was no femme fatale, she wasn't even that good looking. I don't know what these people see in other people who allow their child to die at the hands of them. I don't know what they see. It's just infuriating. Both defendants called Arthur derogatory names, both in text to each other and in front of other witnesses as well. When Arthur objected to his treatment, his distress was recorded instead of being alleviated. More than 200 recordings were found by investigators. Dr. Sarah Dixon said that many of the clips are of a little boy sobbing, many crying to himself. There is a sense of desolation and desperation. They give the impression of a lonely little boy in tears. He seems just heartbroken. In some of the clips, Arthur appears to be pleading. It is an extensive catalogue of Arthur's wishes and feelings. The evidence he very clearly and repeatedly articulated his hunger, his thirst, discomfort, and his sadness. Investigators were never in any doubt that Emma and Thomas were in it together. With the verdicts in, Detective Inspector Laura Harrison of West Midlands Police was willing to speculate as to the motive. She said, quote, "I think Emma Tustin wanted to create a family unit in her home which wasn't to include Arthur. That's my personal opinion. But there is no excuse and there is no explanation as to why anybody would be able to treat anybody or anything in the way they did." End of quote. Arthur's maternal grandmother, Madeline Halcrow, said the whole family loved Arthur to bits, but that all contact with him was stopped after Thomas moved in with Emma. They never saw Arthur again.
Madeline Halcrow joins us now in her first live television interview. You had fears about what was happening to him, didn't you?
I did. On hell, if they get there first.
On the day before Arthur died, his father shouted that he would put him 6 feet under and told Emma in a text message to just end him. 18 hours later, that's exactly what she did. Detective Inspector Laura Harrison went on to say that the couple were evil. They were too selfish and focused on themselves. Quote, that's really clear in the CCTV from inside the home when Arthur is stood facing the door for hours and they are both in the hot tub in the garden just enjoying themselves. The behavior cannot be excused, cannot be understood, and is just absolute torture which can only be described as evil. End of quote. Arthur's grandfather, Peter Halcrow, 61 years old, said that the couple must never see the light of day again. He told the Sun, quote, no punishment could ever be enough for this pair. I have never favored the death penalty because I know mistakes can be made by courts, but in my view, they have forfeited their right to live. It will burden taxpayers, but they should certainly never leave prison as long as they live for such cruelty and inhumanity. End of quote. The Attorney General Office said on the 4th of December that the sentences would be reviewed to determine whether they were too low. Mr. Justice Mark Wall, the presiding judge, described the case in his sentencing remarks as among the most distressing and disturbing cases that he has dealt with. On July 29, 2022, Thomas's sentence was increased to 24 years on appeal as the judge found his original sentence to be too lenient. Emma's sentence was not changed. A local review was launched into the incident soon after Arthur's death. Shortly after the conviction, the government announced that there would be a national inquiry into the case. The review found that Child Protection Services had been involved in Arthur's life on various occasions dating back to 2018 and repeatedly not intervened to help him. According to the review, professionals had only a limited understanding of what daily life was like for Arthur. They had a very short time to develop a relationship and engage with Arthur in assessment to establish trust. Arthur's voice was often mediated by his father in contact with professionals. Too many assessments relied on the father's perspective and didn't really include the views of the wider extended family or other professionals who had significant involvement with Arthur. Thomas Hughes was seen from the very first assessment in 2019 as a protective father. This was never again challenged by any professional when circumstances changed and when evidence to the contrary, such as reports from Thomas's own family that they were not sure he would protect Arthur, was available. Arthur's wider family members were not listened to, despite their many attempts to get agencies to look into what might be happening to Arthur. Their views were not heard and their concerns were not taken seriously. Family members and other connected adults can speak on behalf of the child and enable their voice to be heard. There was never any proper consideration given to the risk to Arthur arising from the move to live with Emma Tustin, despite her long involvement with social services and the very significant information about her that was available. The response to concerns about bruising to Arthur was undermined by the lack of multi-agency strategy discussion, which should always be triggered when there are allegations about the suspected abuse of children. The review recommends that multi-agency child protection units, which are described as integrated and co-located multi-agency teams staffed by experienced child protection professionals, are established in every local authority area. These teams will be staffed by professionals with the highest level of child protection expertise and experience, and will see the key child protection agencies of the police, health and social care working together seamlessly as a single team. That would mean that there would be a consistent and highly skilled group of multidisciplinary professionals leading official child protection practice in every local area. The review has put forward proposals for strengthened multi-agency leadership and accountability and for better multi-agency coordination and system oversight from the central government. Roles and responsibility for child protection need to be clearer both locally and nationally. The national review was initiated in the context of widespread public distress about the circumstances of the deaths of Arthur and Star Hobson that followed the conclusion of the two murder trials. I've already covered Star Hobson's case. A set of issues were identified in the review which hindered professionals' understanding of what was happening to Arthur and Star. These included weaknesses in information sharing, a lack of robust critical thinking, and challenge within and between agencies, a need for sharper specialist child protection skills and expertise, as well as the need for leaders to have a powerful enabling impact on child protection practice.
That I am as determined as everybody in this House to get to the truth and expose what went wrong and take any action necessary to protect children. To do so, serious questions need to be asked. I want to make clear that police officers, teachers, social workers, health workers and others go to work each day to try to make things better, to do their best at what are very difficult jobs. Those already serving our country's most vulnerable children deserve our thanks, and I want to be extremely clear that no safeguarding professional should be the victim of any abuse. The targeting of individuals is wrong and helps nobody. But that does not mean we should not seek to understand what went wrong and how we can stop it from happening again. The public deserve to know why, in this rare case, things went horrifyingly wrong and what more could be done to prevent abuse such as this happening again in the future. I'm sure members across the House will recognise that improvements have been made from previous reviews, but the question now is whether that is enough. In order to look at issues nationally as well as locally, we established the National Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel in 2017 for cases like Arthur's. That is why, given the enormity of this case, the range of agencies involved and the potential for its implications to be felt nationally. Over the weekend, Mr. Speaker, I asked Annie Hudson, Chair of the National Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel, to work with leaders in Solihull to deliver a single national independent review of Arthur's death to identify what must be learnt from this terrible case. This will encompass local government as well as those working in the police, health and education sectors. Officials in my department are already in close contact with the Solihull Safeguarding Partnership, which is grateful for the support offered and agree with this approach as the best way to deliver comprehensive national learning and identify whether there are any gaps that need to be addressed. Annie and her colleagues on the national panel, who come from the police, health and children's services, have dedicated their lives and decades-long careers to bettering the lives of the most vulnerable children in our society. And I have every faith that their review will be robust, it will be vigorous and thorough. I've already assured Annie, as I assure you, Mr. Speaker, now, that she will be given all the support she needs to do the job properly. This review will focus specifically on Arthur's case and identify where improvements need to be made. But I also want to make certain we have looked at how all the relevant local agencies are working now, including how they are working together. For that reason, I have also asked Ofsted, the Care Quality Commission, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, and Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation to lead a joint targeted area inspection. I have asked that each of these inspectorates be involved because of the range of local services which had been involved in Arthur and his family's life during the preceding months. These joint inspections are well established, but a new ambitious approach will be used with a sharp focus on the entry point to the child protection system across all agencies. This will mean we can truly look at where improvements are needed by all the agencies tasked with protecting children in the Solihull area, so that we can be assured that we are doing everything in our power to protect other children and prevent such evil crimes. As part of this inspection, all the agencies tasked with protecting children at risk of abuse and neglect in Solihull will have their effectiveness considered and instructed on where improvements must be made, both in Solihull as well as where learnings can be applied to other areas around the country. These inspectorates have met today to plan this work, and the work will begin next week. I, as well as officials in my department and across government, could not be taking this more seriously, and I've been working this weekend to bring everyone together to make sure this work can start immediately. We are already investing heavily to help the legions of dedicated professionals on the front line deliver the care that we all know every child deserves. We've also known that the care system needed bold and wide-ranging reforms, which is why we have the independent review of children's social care happening now. I know that Josh McAllister, who leads the review, Mr. Speaker, will make recommendations about what a decisive child protection response needs to look like, given it sits at the core of the system he is reviewing. And importantly, I know that the review will be looking at how social workers, especially those with the most experience, can spend time with families and protecting children, because we all know social workers do their best work with families, not behind a desk. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the prosecuting barrister, Jonas Hanken QC, his team and the jury for their service in this troubling case. As the court heard, Arthur's tragic death is a result of the cruelty of his father and his father's partner. No government anywhere in the world can legislate for evil, but we will take action wherever we can to stop it from happening again, because we must do more. And to do more, I'd like to end my statement with a plea to everyone in our country. Anyone who sees or suspects child abuse can report their concerns to local children's services or by contacting the government-supported NSPCC helpline for adults or practitioners concerned about a child or young person. So if you see or suspect child abuse, report it. If you are worried about a child you know, report it. If something appears off or you are seeing something that troubles you, report it. As we uncover what went wrong, Mr. Speaker, and what led to Arthur's tragic death, we must also strengthen our resolve to make sure that we prevent these crimes as much as they can be possibly prevented. We must make sure that those who would do wicked acts to children face justice. We must do absolutely everything in our power to protect vulnerable young children from harrowing and evil abuse. And I commend the statement to the House.
The mom of Arthur Labinjo-Hughes paid tribute to her son from her prison cell. Madeline Halcrow, Olivia's mother and Arthur's grandmother, she actually was the one who read out her daughter's tribute. It read, quote, "Arthur was the light of my life. He wasn't just my only child, he was my best friend. Never did I imagine he would be taken from this world so early in his life. If Arthur could ask for one last thing, it would be that he was remembered for his superpower. That will always be what I remember, and Arthur's superpower was his smile." Talking about Arthur's loves would not be complete without mentioning superheroes, Marvel or DC. Arthur loved them all, from Batman to Black Panther, Aquaman to The Flash. He had every costume and action figure and would spend hours dressing up and pretending he had all of their superpowers. Following the verdicts in the trial of Emma and Thomas, Olivia wanted to take the opportunity to focus on the life Arthur lived and to celebrate the beautiful little boy she knew and loved deeply. Quote, "The details of Arthur's case are harrowing and incomparable, but I want people to know who Arthur was. From his huge smile and his personality to his gentle, caring nature. All mothers are biased and believe their children are the best, and I'm no different." End of quote. She said her child filled her life with joy from the moment he was born, and he was always smiling and had the most inquisitive little mind. She went on to remember her son. Quote, "Arthur loved his food. He was 10 pounds and 6 ounces when he was born, and his love of milk soon turned to his love of food. He would try anything, and like all children, he always wanted what I was having. I remember when he started school. Every day on the way home, he would tell me what he'd had at lunchtime, and then he would ask me what we were going to have for dinner." She also said Arthur adored football, that he was a keen supporter of Birmingham City FC and loved wearing their kit. He loved being outdoors, playing football, and by the time he was 4, he could name most of the England team. Olivia finished her tribute by saying, "I could talk for hours about what Arthur loved and who Arthur was, but everyone who knew and loved him has their own story." And this, guys, is the horrific story of Arthur Labinjo-Hughes. And yet again, we have the same institutions created to protect children, allowing them to die. And why? Maybe simply because the police and social services were too lazy to do something or to care about a child, not their own. Maybe because they decided to use the pandemic as an excuse to not do more, actually to not do anything, in fact. And here we are yet again with reviews and changes following reviews. But then we always have that, don't we? A child dies of a review is conducted, changes are needed, and then it keeps going back in circles. They never learned, or it seems like, in my opinion, they don't want to learn, and we are told when we see something to say something, to call the police, to call social services, right? But then what's the point to call when nothing happens until it's too late? Arthur's family, Emma's family, Arthur's school said something. They called, they reported, having faith in the system that Arthur will be removed and kept safe. But he wasn't. Emma and Thomas were allowed to use him, to isolate him, to keep food away from him, friends, family, everything and everyone. They even bought McDonald's for Emma's children and for themselves, and whilst they enjoyed their food, Arthur was isolated standing in the hallway. They both ate ice cream on the sofa whilst Arthur was forced to stand in the hallway with nothing. How can you as an adult do that and then pretend that everything is just perfect? Pretend that your own child is not standing in the hallway thirsty, hot and hungry and alone. How can you lick that ice cream when you know your child is not allowed to have any? And worst of all, the other 2 children got their ice creams, their McDonald's, their activities. Yet Arthur didn't. Like, he didn't deserve the basic needs to be met. Surely, when the other 2 children are treated right, Emma and Thomas must have known what they did to Arthur was wrong. What was their justification? His behavior? How about their behavior? Who punished them for their behavior? I feel sorry most of all for Arthur. Of course, I will feel sorry 100% for Arthur, for everything that he went through, and for dying thinking that nobody loved him, for calling out his uncle for help, for asking for food and water in vain, for crying out alone in pain, isolated from the world. I can't imagine the pain his family is going through right now, and my heart really goes out to them. I also hope Emma's children get therapy for the trauma that they went through as well, seeing the assaults on Arthur and seeing him laying deceased in the home. We've only seen very little of the CCTV footage of Arthur's pain, but the jury, the solicitors, the judge and the investigators saw everything. Over 200 hours worth of recordings. I think that the jurors will forever be haunted by those recordings, and I wish there would be more help available for jurors attending this type of horrific cases in court, because they have seen everything. They must be traumatized from this. If an adult gets traumatized from watching the recorded assaults, just imagine how it must have been like for Arthur. You know guys, when I do my research for my videos and when I read post-mortem results and everything that a victim goes through, because of the depth of information that I like to have, I can imagine seeing the victim being assaulted and how terrifying it must have been and how heartbroken I feel. And then I'm asking myself, how can someone stand by and watch, and how can someone inflict this torture on a child, in this case a 6-year-old child? How can you even raise your hand when you see in front of you a defenseless child? Arthur died in 1 minute of being attacked. What kind of force and rage Emma had to be able to do it in 1 minute? And then she also had children of her own. How could she have done this to another child? Arthur Labinjo-Hughes, everyone loves you. You are loved, and we can all see your superpowers.
Arthur, are you going to play for England? No, why not?
After when I've played for Liverpool, I'm going to play for Tottenham.
So you're going to play for Liverpool, then Tottenham. What about England?
After when I'm in Tottenham.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. If you are interested in any of the makeup I used for today's video, all the products are linked in the description down below under this video. Again, thanks so much for staying with me. I know this was a horrific case to go through, so thank you again for staying with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!